Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Dr. Faraz Ali, a clinical research fellow from Cardiff University. And today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the validation of an electronic version of the DLQI. Now, there has been an increasing use of electronic patient-reported outcomes across dermatology and indeed in other specialties, such as tablets and mobile and smartphones. However, these electronic patient-reported outcomes are not always validated and tested, and this can raise concerns for reliability and validity. So the aim of this study was to compare the conventional paper-based and novel iPad version of the DLQI and try and compare the scores and also see what patient acceptability and preference was. And we want to see whether both the paper version and the iPad version are equivalent. So the study, it used a randomized crossover design with a within subjects comparison of the two formats of the paper and iPad DLQI. Now, what that means is patients were randomized to either use the DLQI in the paper version first or the iPad version. And then after a short interval period, they were switched around. Now, we followed the ISPOR guidelines, which are the International Society for Pharmacoeconomics and Outcomes Research. We only included patients who were aged 18 or above. Now, we looked at any skin condition, and we looked at patients who were attending, we recruited patients who were attending the teaching hospital dermatology outpatient clinic in Cardiff, UK. Now, we looked at the ICC, which is the interclass correlation coefficient score of 0.9, and I'm just going to highlight that here for you. So this was the sort of outcome that we were looking at for the paper. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the DLQI for those who may not be quite aware of it. So the DLQI, it consists of 10 items. And this looks at the patient's quality of life in terms of how it impacts them on a day-to-day basis, and looks at various aspects. So, for example, one of the things it looks at is feelings. Okay, so how patients feel with their skin condition, their daily activities, how it affects their leisure activities, their work, their school, their relationships, and also it looks at side effects of treatment. So each item is scored on a 0 to 3 score on a 4-point scale, and then you add up the total score at the end of the paper, at the end of the DLQI, and it gives you a total score ranging from 0 to 30. 30 being the worst possible quality of life, and 0 being perfect quality of life. So the higher the score, the worse the patient's quality of life impairment. Now, the DLQI is used worldwide. It's shown to have a strong internal consistency, reproducibility, validity, and sensitivity to change. The DLQI is the most widely used quality of life outcome measure, or patient-reported outcome measure, indeed, in dermatology worldwide. And it's part of various registries and guidelines, including the NICE guidelines for psoriasis in the UK. So in order to develop the electronic version of the DLQI, we worked with Janssen to create an electronic app. And this is known as Psoriasis 360. I'm going to, we have a little screenshot here that you can see. I'm going to just talk to you about it. I'm just going to take you quickly through it. You can see that it's the DLQI calculator. Patients press start, and you have a series of questions where patients can select the questions, press submit, and it will give them their total DLQI score. So this is available on iOS and Android app stores, and you can download it, Psoriasis 360. You can see it there. So we only tested this particular iOS version of the DLQI app, and we ensured that the formats and the questions were exactly the same or with minimal changes. Just a quick declaration that we received an educational grant from Janssen to be able to complete this study. So in terms of the results, we approached 497 patients in the outpatient dermatology clinic, as well as approached through mail. We sent several invites via post. Ultimately, 109 patients were recruited for the study, of which 57 were randomized to the paper version first, and 47 to the iPad version first. And then after a 30-minute washout period, they then completed either version that they haven't done before. So let's go down to what we actually found. The median age was 53.5 years, and the most common diagnoses were psoriasis, skin lesion, and eczema. And actually, majority of the patients had their highest level of education at school, about 61%. 17% of patients had never used a tablet before, and just under a half stated that they were little or not comfortable with the tablet prior to participating in the study. And that's quite interesting, because half of them had not used a tablet before in terms of how comfortable they were. Sorry, a fifth hadn't used a tablet, and about half were really uncomfortable using it. But despite this, we showed a high ICC of 0.98, and there was a high concordance between the paper and the iPad versions of the DLQI. Patients on average took longer to complete the iPad version, 78 seconds, and a median of 73 seconds for the paper. Despite this, 76% preferred the electronic version and actually thought it took a shorter time than the paper version. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is very uncomfortable or very uneasy, patients found both paper and iPad to be comfortable and easy to use, but they found the iPad more so. So in terms of conclusions now, we think that the results demonstrate a good equivalence between the paper and the iPad versions. And there was a clear patient preference for the iPad version. And this has a wide implication in terms of using patient-reported outcomes in dermatology, but also across other medical specialties. And this can pave the way for using electronic patient-reported outcomes without much concern in the research, particularly in the research field. But this can also hopefully encourage uptake of the electronic formats of the DLQI in clinical settings, and we hope it will encourage patients to also complete this medium, particularly because everyone has smartphones and therefore monitor the quality of life at home. And this can really change the way we practice medicine in the future. So I'd like to thank Professor Finlay and Professor Sam Salik and Professor Vincent Piguet for their kind advice and guidance for this study. Thank you very much.